Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for episode 11 of season 4 of Black Writers Read. My name is Nicole Young Martin, and I am the founder, producer, and host of this series. I've been quite busy over the past few weeks under the Black Writers Read platform. During Black History Month, I contributed the third Black Writers Read bookshelf containing books by past guests to Holyoke Community College's El Centros, which is a student center on their campus. Earlier this month, I hosted an in person podcast recording interviewing Western Massachusetts gem Janine Fondon. My chat with Janine is now available on the audio podcast. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Also, personal note, I published my very first commentary article and recorded it. It's available via New England Public Media for folks who are interested. I will be more than happy to share. I think I shared it on a lot of my platforms, so you should be able to find it on my Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So let's go ahead and get today's conversation started. Black Writers Read showcases, celebrates, and honors the words, work, and traditions of Black writers from across the country, across genres, across experiences, and across the African diaspora. Black Writers Read is a behind the scenes conversation into the craft and what it means to create as a Black author in today's society. Since starting the series during the summer of 2020, we've hosted over 60 authors representing 10 plus genres from 4 countries and 15 states. Today, we welcome back Angie Chatman, who shared her work during our Black History Month live stream event back in 2021, which I had a chance to check in with Angie prior to jumping on. And I said, I'm in the process of trying to get more of the folks who have been on some of our longer reads to come back and actually have one-to-one conversations with them. So I'm very excited about today with Angie. Angie Chatman is a writer and storyteller. She's written for Insider Personal Finance, MIT Tech Review, the National Science Foundation, Yahoo News, and elsewhere. Her literary work has appeared in Brevity, TaintTaintTaint Magazine, Literary Landscapes, Pangyrus, I hope I pronounced that correctly, the Rumpus, Blood Orange Review, Hippocampus Magazine. She was a 2020 Pushcart Prize nominee, which is an amazing accomplishment. Chatman has appeared on the Moth Radio Hour, GBH, World Channel Stories from the Stage, and Story Collider. An engineer by degree, Chatman also earned an MBA from MIT-Sloan and an MFA from Queen's University in Charlotte. Born and raised on Chicago's South Side, Angie now lives in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston with her family. To learn more about Angie and her expansive body of work, please visit angiecwriter.com. I actually want to give a very special shout out to the Boston Writers of Color via Grub Street. It's just a community that has helped us to stay connected. For those of you who are new to Black Writers Read, here's the format of our show. Angie will share an excerpt from her forthcoming work, and then we'll chat about her work. If time remains at the end of the conversation, we'll open it up to questions and answers. For those of you who are joining us today, we have viewers joining us from Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. If you have a question, please feel free to include it in the comment section on the platform where you're joining us from today. I will compile the questions and either pose them to our guests following our conversation or insert them during an appropriate time within our chat. I'd now like to welcome Angie back to the virtual stage. Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here. And it's so nice to see you again. Boy, you've been busy too. Look at that.
Yeah, since we last spoke, I got married. I got my doctorate. It's just been just ongoing, ongoing, ongoing. I also now launched into which I've wanted to do commentary writing for the longest time, and I published my first piece last week. So I'm super excited about my career ahead. Thank
Pop
you.
credit.
So I'll go ahead and turn the stage over to you. Enjoy reading.
Okay. Calla's song. Calla looked in the bathroom mirror at her son DJ, who was struggling to zip up her dress. He was handsome, like his father, but his eyes were kind and sincere, while DeMarcus's had been cold. Calla also saw his frustration and grief. She wished she could remove both, but there was nothing she could do. She was at stage 4 of pancreatic cancer. There wasn't a stage 5. The disease had taken DJ's childhood. She was not going to allow it to take his music. I didn't hear you practice, she said as she applied more makeup to her sallow skin. I didn't want to wake you. DJ, I love hearing you play, even in my dreams. But if you decide to practice later, make sure your mute box is on. Where are you going? You're too sick to be going out. I'm going to see Gideon Banks and his band. He's a good friend, remember? We grew up together. If he's such a good friend, why haven't you ever mentioned him? He whined as if he was 4 instead of 16 with a pimple on his chin. I have mentioned him. You probably don't remember, she said. We were all good friends. Your father and his mother lived on the second floor. Gideon was on the first floor with his parents and older sister, Melanie. DJ finished zipping and interrupted. I did listen, and I do remember. Then what's the problem? Why are you going to see him? You're sick, but you're getting dressed up. If he's just a friend who I've never met, why bother? You put your pill pack in your purse, so I know you plan on staying a while. His voice cracked. Mom, what's going on? Calla pushed past him into the living room. It's whom I've never met. Where's my coat? DJ followed. Mom, please, he said, wiping his tears on his sleeve. I know something is up. Calla put on her coat, picked up her purse and keys. I'm going to ask Gideon to be your guardian. Gideon Banks, my guardian? What? His last album was nominated for a Grammy. Mom, what are you thinking? I'm thinking about your future. You'll need a guardian. And if I don't do it, you'll end up in foster care and you might end up with someone who can't appreciate your talent. Calla touched DJ's chin, avoiding the pimple. I've got to go. We'll talk about it later. Don't stay up too late and don't forget to wash the dishes. Thank you.
This is so awesome. Like one of the things I'm not gonna lie, it's such a personal masterclass for me whenever I have people on because of course I'm listening for nuggets that I can interfuse into my own work and I've been working on my first piece of flash fiction and hearing how you use dialogue in this piece is really helping me to figure out the conversation piece that's missing. So thank you.
You're welcome. After all, Nicole, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping your listeners.
That's very true. So let's launch into the first question. I'm so excited, especially given the breadth of your work. I want to start off today's conversation with asking, when did you discover that writing and storytelling would be the vehicles to carry your voice?
Oh, I didn't discover it. you make that, you make that sound like I had an active, pursuit. No, I had to be bumped over the head over and over again before I became a writer. Because, when I was growing up, there were 3 options, right? Doctor, and I couldn't stand blood. Lawyer. My father was a lawyer, and they just started. I was old enough, so when they just started taking your daughter to work day, and so he took me to work with him, and I'm like, "What? Lawyers don't have any power. It's all the judge. I don't want to be a judge." And then he told me how much schooling that would take. Not to mention the politics, because I had never seen a Black female judge. And then the third option was engineering. So I did engineering, and it was still really, really male and white. And so I was at AWP last month on a panel, and my story begins because I kept getting fired. God was like, you don't belong here, you don't belong here, you don't belong here. And a friend of mine was in the audience, and she's a comedian writer. And she said, your next book is the 17 times I got fired so that I learned to be a writer.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't do writing. It's funny because my mother was a poet.
Really?
She even won once she passed, you're going through people's things. And actually I wasn't going through her things. One of her friends, best friends, since they were like 12 years old, said, did you know? And I'm like, did you know? Why didn't you tell me when she was alive so I could have talked to her about this, right? And she won a statewide poetry contest when she was 15.
Yeah, it's just so weird the things that we learn about our parents when they're no longer here. Because I learned a lot about my mom when she passed, which actually today is the anniversary of her burial. And like I remember going through all of her things and I found out she wore glasses, which she hid from me. She didn't wear glasses during the time, when she was alive and I was under her care. I knew that she was like a statewide track star, but there were other things that I didn't. And I'm like, why did you hide this from me?
And I don't think that I don't think she was hiding it per se. I just think because I look at myself now and I'm about the age my mother was when she got sick, when she, and I just think it's like, that's not part of my life right now, so why, how do I bring it up, you know?
Yeah. No, that's an interesting way to put it, to say like, it's not a part of the life. So that's a very interesting way to put it. The next question I have for you, I'm gonna jump questions because given that you mentioned your mother and the things that you discovered about your mom, when preparing for each Black Writers Read conversation, we ask each of our guests, why do they write? Here's an excerpt from your response. For me, writing is a way of self preservation and healing my lineage as an African American woman. I write for my children and for my ancestors by documenting and honoring those stories that aren't available to them and never have been in mainstream media. I write about motherhood as a Black woman because I am often the only voice in the room to do so. Plus, the majority of other images of Black mothers, this is what made me jump to this question, in the media are those crying over the coffins of their murdered children, echoing Mamie Till's iconic image in the alternative media source of the day, the Chicago Defender. My short stories investigate themes of motherhood and intergenerational pain. They are reflections of stories I heard in my childhood in Chicago during the 60s and the 70s. What is the mission for your work in your words, and how is your work influencing and informing both the literary canon and also to the platforms of truth telling?
That's a good one. That's a good word. Yeah,
Mhm.
so the reason why I write is just to get the voices out of my head.
Mm.
You're reading from my artist statement, and you need to have an artist statement to apply for grants and residencies and all that kind of stuff. So I threw that together.
It sounds so intentional though, and it also, and this is,
Well, I'm a
and
writer.
right, right. But also too, not to interrupt your response, it
Yeah.
goes back to, because of course I've known of your work since 2021 and I've read a lot of it in prep for today and also when you were on in 2021. And to hear that, the world had to yank you to become a writer was just very interesting because as I was reading your artist statement and also too reading your work, it sounds like writing has always been something that you were called to do and that it was a skill that you always had. So when you said that it took so many things for you to become a writer was just so interesting because it seems like it's a skill that you've been like just sharpening your entire life.
Yes, I have unknowingly, right? And the reason why I talk about motherhood, well, so when you say that I, crafted the artist statement, I did, but people had to, I only hear the voices and I just put them down. People interpret those and then tell me, "Oh, you're writing about this, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Am I?" You know, I'm just writing the voices. And so one person who said that, well, there's two things that happen in this artist statement. One, I got a Mass Cultural Council grant during COVID. And part of that is, yay, the money, right? But the other part is that you get these classes for free, right? You get to invited. And so this woman, oh, beautiful woman, PhD, her job that was part of her grant, is to talk to other artists. And it was all artists. It was, uh, dancing, painting, the visual arts, music. And so we were all in a class together. right? And this just goes to show you, because I tell my students, not just to go to reading, that's a given, right? But support the other arts, because you will learn something from those arts, because writers have to do everything that the other artists have to do, and we only have black marks, while painters have paint to use it, and dancers have their body, and musicians have black marks, but they also have an instrument. So they already come with something. We come with nothing. So anyway, all of these things came together because Diana is her name. She said, when you talk about your work, it seems like all your characters are in the throes of motherhood. And I'm like, oh, really?
Wow.
Okay. Because Calla, she's dying and she wants to take care of her son. Another of the people in my collection in progress, she's pregnant and doesn't know whether she wants to keep the baby. And then, so it's like, oh, yeah, I see, huh? There is a connection, there is a thread, right? And I realized after all that, how you get the memories come back. And my mother had, so she was a teacher, number one, and then she had two sisters. And so our neighbor, play Auntie June, and my Aunt Barbara and my Aunt Amelia would come over to the house, during the summer, because they didn't really have to work. They had to go and do lesson plans, but they had half days. And they would just sit at a table or out on the porch or whatever and shoot the shit. Of course, they didn't call it that, but that's what they were doing, about, whose husband is messing around, and whose kid really needs to get some help, and all of those kind of things. And if you were really, really quiet, you could sit on the edge of the room. They can't see you, right? And I would hear all that about what's going on. And it just stored, that everything is not as it seems in people's households. And then also, like I said, 60s and 70s, it was about women's rights, big time. And so that was the other thing that I was overhearing, how this woman stopped letting her husband beat her, how she left, how she took the kids, how she didn't take the kids, all those kind of things were happening. And this is what really makes now I realize, and Diana said it too, again, this advisor, she said, your work is so timely because all those rights are being, taken away. We're trying to regress. And so that's where it came from. And then, and the main thing was, in Chicago, Emmett Till, I mean, his mother also taught, right? So my mother and her squad, right, knew her. And it's a big deal. It's still a big deal in Chicago because he was buried. He wasn't buried. His funeral was there. And he was the same age as my uncle when he died. So, it's just a big deal in Chicago. And then the third thing was that, my own motherhood story, my own motherhood journey. We've moved a lot. You just appreciate your mother more or don't appreciate, or come to some understanding when you're living it yourself. It's like, oh my God, this is what she was dealing with, plus working full time with somebody else's kids in school. So that's where all of that came from. Long story short, that's where all that came from. It was there's one third one, because 3 times means it's definitely something you should include. I took a friend, a writer friend, was hosting a motherhood class, and I'm like, I'm going to take it since I found out that I'm writing motherhood. What is this about?
Wow.
So that I can go on shows and be, intelligent about it. And we introduced ourselves. I'm the only Black woman in the room. And, they're talking and everything. And I'm like, I'm just tired of seeing mothers over their coffins for their dead children. That's what I see as a Black woman, because they were talking about all these roles of motherhood and popular culture and everything. And I'm like, yeah, we had Cosby, and now we know that wasn't right.
Oh my goodness. Woo!
And then at the time, Blackish was on, right? But that's all we see. Those are the kind of mothers we had. That's not, and then the other ones in media is women crying over their children. So that's a long answer to your question.
No, but it really, because now it really explains, because especially in the nonfiction realm, because that's a lot of the stuff that I was reading when I Googled you. And I think that's where the truth telling comes from, is the fact that your role and your identities really inform how you look at the world, how you capture the experience, and then how you tell the story to someone else. This is very, very calling to, and I know a lot of the authors that have been on here do this, speaks a lot to what James Baldwin was doing in terms of bearing witness. It's like, how do you capture what is happening to tell it to someone else, and also to examine it and to prevent it from happening again in history. And thank you also too for bringing up what is happening in the world with regards to women's autonomy, women's bodies. We've been here before. We've been here before. We know the story. So it's like, why are we back here? And I'm just like, yeah. So I love that your writing is very, not only introspective, but also too, it's very much boom. Here's what's happening in the world. Here it is. And also doing it too for really diverse audiences. This is one of the questions that I have for you. And this is why I really look up to you, because you've been able to move across so many different platforms to get your writing out there. So yeah, so
Yeah.
the next question I have for you,
Mm.
yeah. And speaking of that, your work has moved across the stage and the printed page. So for folks who are watching today, if you Google Angie and go to her website, not only are there links to articles and things such as like Business Insider, but also too, you reciting your work on stage. How do you navigate these spaces, particularly as a Black woman writing? Why is it important? And then why is it important to you to show up in these spaces? Because, of course, those spaces you're ping ponging to genre. So, in like one space, the nonfiction space, the writing has to show up differently. And then in poetry and kind of short story, and the fiction space, your writing shows up differently. But from what it sounds like, you've been able to, like, hyphenate's not the right word, but bring together the worlds where fiction and nonfiction, truth telling, and imagination can kind of live, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes real good sense because what I tell my students is that writing is an art, publishing is a business, right? So
Mm.
all that genre stuff is for business reasons. It's like, where can I put this in on the shelf so that people will have a hint of what it's about and buy it? That's what that's for. And I take that because my original art, because I think everyone is an artist, that the key is to find the art that you can do and that whispers in your ear most strongly. So mine was music, and I still, that's another reason why my dialogue is great, and something I hear, um, because I played, I had piano lessons for years. That was one thing. In fact, one of my essays, my personal essays, is called "Jazz is the Root," and
Yeah.
it describes the only thing I can, the only thing my father and I have in common is listening to
Wow.
music. So, because, whatever, the divorce, it's we're estranged, all that kind of stuff. But, for your own mental health, we see each other, on holidays or call or whatever. But I know that if we just stick to talking about music and musicians, nobody will get hurt.
Wow.
So music is really, really something for me. And yeah. So your question was, how do I divide it? So I don't divide it. And you and I were talking before about since 2021 or 2020, I forget how far along we are, but I got fired from my day job. And, you know, the universe was trying to tell me something, which because I've been fired over 17 times.
Oh my gosh.
No, I mean, 17 is a big number. It's not exactly 17, but I've been fired a lot. And it was like, okay, you know what? And it was COVID. So I had already applied for unemployment. So when that $600 came, I was already signed up. So I didn't have to go through all that administrative thing. It just showed up in my bank account. And so I'm like, okay, God, I hear you now. I'm really sorry that I was so stupid, but I'm not going to look for a job because, what are you going to do when there's a pandemic? Instead, I'm going to pay down my debt as much as possible so that I can write. Because I kept on saying, I want to write, I want to write, I want to write. And so it's like, here, you idiot. I'm giving you,
Yes.
I'm slapping you. I'm giving you some money. You don't have to go to a job, sit down and write. And so the other thing I did is during that time I read Shonda Rhimes's book, Say Yes. And so I was like, okay, here's a year. I'm going to say yes. And I said yes to every opportunity. And so the stage, like I was a friend of mine, and she should be on the Zoom because she's
Yes.
listening. She said, let's go to this class, it's talking about writing and how to story structure. And so that's the other thing that's so necessary for me is what kind of container I put my story in, right? And that should be the same for everybody. But for me, it's really a challenge. The container doesn't present itself until way deep in the process. And so it's like going through the weeds while the dialogue, like I said, is right there. Anyway, went to this. It turns out it was a recruiting thing for stories from the stage. And so the woman who was teaching the class said, don't you want to do a stories on the stage? And I'm like, no, but I'm reading Shonda's book. Yes, okay, what the heck? And that's how I got into it. And it's really fun. I highly recommend it because that's the other thing for me too. I had to have, not only did I have this friend, saying, let's go. So, I had a partner in crime, but it's also, I knew that when my book, because it's when, gets published, you're going to do readings. And the worst thing that can happen for a book is a poor reading, right? So practice. This is practice, reading in front of people. Because writers are mostly introverts, but this is a skill. Learn how to do it.
Yeah, because actually ironically, I'm doing a workshop on reading your work publicly at the Right Angles Conference. That's going to be in Northampton, Massachusetts, in April. It's in less than a month.
I was
And
about to say next month.
right. And I've done that workshop before. And it's like I came to writing kind of backwards. I started off in classical music as well as a clarinet player for a very long time. And then I left it for racism and a lot of other stuff, and then did theater, and then came to writing because I was looking to build community. I moved out here from Detroit, and I was like, I don't know anybody here. And people were like, join this writing group. And I was like, I don't write, but okay. And then that's when that voice was started. And similarly to my work, and this now explains it, I was like, oh, I get it now. I do hear a particular cadence in your dialogue. Like it does flow like music. It's very call and response. And like also too, it's a very rhythmic thing. And I was like, and to hear that you're a musician, that makes a lot of sense. And then also too, again, going back to the master class for me, like the whole just taking the risk. And I'm saying this live, so hopefully I don't, nothing happens to me, but I do have a full-time job and several part-time jobs. And it's like people are like, clean up your stuff, clean up your debt, and take take the leap to finally just write. Because I have avoided it for so long. One, because I was doing my doctorate, but two, I was just constantly like barrage of excuses. And so your path and you being on today and sharing that with me, because I also didn't realize that was what brought you into writing, is saying to me, Nicole, do it, do it, do it, just do it. Like, I don't know why you're waiting. So thank you for also too your transparency about your journey.
Yeah, one day I'm really when I do have my book, I really want the woman who fired me to see it. I'm gonna send her one because I'm like, thank you very much, because you were the last person who fired me. So, um, I finally got the message. But the other thing is you said you just got married. My husband actually really put the nail in the head, where we were having one of those discussions that I'm sure you don't have yet because you're newlywed.
Yes. Yes.
But, I was doing the finger waving and, walking around and, and so he stopped for a minute and he like, rubbed his head like, what, how can I get to her? And he's like, have you been writing lately? And I'm like, what has that got to do with what we're talking about now? See, this is your problem. This has nothing to do with my writing, etc. And he put his hand on my arm and he said, Angie, you're happier when you're writing. I want you to be happy. And I'm like, oh, that's why I married you. You're so good to me.
Yes. Wow.
So that's the other reason why when people say, where's your book or all this kind of stuff, I'm like, I'm happier when I'm writing. I'm just writing to stay happy. And I'm really writing to stay sane, right? Because in this world now, and again, I mean, I have a 28-year-old son. And when he was in college, and it's not like women, are exempt from this either. Every time my daughter goes out, she works gig jobs. And but my 28-year-old son, when he was in college, he called us because he was drunk, hanging out with the boys. He was not driving. He got in an Uber, but the Uber driver dropped him off at the police station because he was drunk. And I'm like, this, why not drop him at home? That's what he's paying you for. And so he got, a few hours. They let him go. It's not on his record, but I'm like, this is the kind of country we live in when it comes to Black men, that random strangers, right, can put you in danger. Yeah.
This was the Uber driver? Wow.
Yes. Yes. His excuse was because, of course, we went ahead and protested to Uber, who's like, yeah, whatever. But, it just made me feel better. That the Uber driver claimed that he didn't give a distinct address. But you have to put it in there. So,
Right.
that's bullshit. It's just another, way that Black people are harassed and at risk and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think writing for me, that's why writing for me is a protest act, because I'm going to be happy, damn it.
I'm gonna be happy, damn it. This
I
is see the same.
don't care what you put in front of me. I'm going to be happy. There you go.
And I want to thank your husband for, being that reality check to be like, are you writing? Because that's the thing. But also too, it just shows that the two of you know each other so well. Like for him
Oh
to be
yeah,
like,
one of the stories I told on stage was about how we met when we were 12. I was 12, he was 13.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And then years later, we ran across each other again, and that's when we started dating.
So he really knows you.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't know me, but we know our families, because those, what happened was that we were going to the same middle school. He was a year ahead of me. So the next year, though, he went to boarding school. He went, and I didn't see him. you're away,
Oh.
But I ran into him because you remember people. It's funny. I've gone to one reunion, I think, and it's like you remember people the way they were, and that's why you tell people you look just the same. They don't at all, but in your head, it's the kid you were in math class with.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because I haven't been, because I like our 25th reunion just happened a couple of years ago, and I didn't go. But I'm like, because I'm connected to all y'all on Facebook. And when I actually am forced to like be in real time dialogue, because we recently started a group, me, the marching band, because our marching band director recently wanted to connect with all of us, and now I see their faces, even though pictures, in more real time as their messages pop up, and I'm like, wow, this is real. We are adults now. Like this is just, you see the wrinkles, the sags, and like we all still look the same, but we look like we have filters on, and I'm like, oh, this is what adulting's like.
Yeah, I know. I'm grown. That's what I at the last reunion. I'm like, oh my God, I'm grown. I'm an adult. On this campus, I was never, I was still a kid. Oh, no wonder you made all those mistakes. You didn't know and you weren't listening.
Yeah, you weren't listening. Yes, I was one of those kids where I was the honor roll student, but I had, for citizenship, I had like threes and fours because I was always the one fighting back authority and like talking back. I was that kid, so I know.
I'm not surprised you're a writer.
Yeah.
I mean, when there's not it's not a coincidence that in authoritarian countries, which is what we are becoming, the writers and the artists are the first to be shut down. That's
Yeah.
another reason why you have to support these museums, and we are being shut down because they have that the Palestinian art at the University of, I think it's Indiana University, because you're
Oh,
from the
that's
Midwest too.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
they said no, you can't do this. What? It's art.
It's
Get over
art.
it.
I remember that. Yeah. And then speaking of that, and it segues nicely into the next question, because I'm current one of the classes I'm currently teaching is arts marketing, and we were just talking about, and I love how I'm on social media right now, so let's see what happens during the live stream. We were talking about shadow banning, social media, and I told them like just be on the lookout for what's being shadow banned, and look at, because many of my students, they are really interested in arts organizations that are progressive, that are like equity and social justice focused, and really changing who shows up and who they do the art for. So I literally said to them after I had the conversation with them about shadow banning, I was like, like just be very cognizant on social media whose posts you're seeing more of now and whose you're seeing least of now. So I was like, yeah. So it's just, and thank you for calling attention to the situation, because for folks who don't know, just Google, and I hope that Google don't do nothing to your phone. Just Google Indiana University and Palestine and the Art Museum there, and it's a very interesting dialogue that's happening. But this, and also the banning of books, and this is why, like platforms like Black Writers Read, to toot my own horn, has to continue, because there's so many mainstream platforms that are purposefully erasing us, like we just don't exist.
Yeah, no, I'll toot your horn too. Black
Oh,
Writers Read is the source.
yes, thank you. One of them. I joined an amazing like cohort of other Black author podcasts, because there's myself, Black and Published, on the Black Writer Studio out of the Hurston Wright Foundation, and a couple others. So I'm like we are all in this, and I know because we all follow one another. So the next question, and I think this is a great segue too, about, because you have been in spaces where it's a mix of, you weren't the only one, but then you were the only one. So can you talk about how existing in these types of communities inform the way that you write and what you write about?
Okay, so you talked about me and Lisa Braxton, and we're Kimbilio Fellows. So that's an all Black space for fiction writers um, from the diaspora. Um, they have a retreat in Taos every year, um, and you just have to get there. You know, they even have you fly to Albuquerque or Santa Fe, and a van comes and gets you and takes you to Taos. And it's just, a week of being around people of, it's not even people of color, people from the diaspora. And so that's Black spaces. And then combine that with, like I said, I'm in this class with motherhood, or even, what's another place where it's like, oh, I'm the only one or one of few, or I was at Ragdale. No, not Ragdale, VCCA, and I think I was the only one then, but I wasn't the only one of color, So okay, they had one of each of us.
I want to eat.
But what I see is different. I'm old enough and now that I don't have a job, so I don't have to worry about stuff. I'm vocal regardless. Um, but what I've learned is the reason why Kimbilio, the all Black space, is so wonderful is because I don't have to be, right. So I don't have to use that energy up, right. And that's what's in fact. Oh, I'm about to write a piece because in the motherhood group, because it's really useful. We do have a lot in common, but on the other hand, it's really I don't want to say amusing. What's another word that's like ironic? It's ironic that um, how how these women are so not like my mother, right? They have these young children, and they're exhausted, and because they have jobs too, and all that kind of stuff, and it's like they feel. I shouldn't speak for them, but I interpret that they feel that something's wrong with that. Okay. And something is, right? Our country should provide universal childcare. But my mother just accepted that, right? That not only would she have to take care of her own children without, help, is that she probably would have to take care of somebody else's kid without help, right? Either a family member or a teacher and her students and those kind of things. And so that's one of the realizations that I have about the system and what it's like for Black mothers versus white mothers. Or I shouldn't say white mothers, privileged mothers, because you can be privileged and not be white, but most of them are privileged. Most of the privilege are white.
Right.
Anywho, so your question, I didn't get around to the question and I lost it.
No, you're totally okay. You're getting there in terms of like how do these spaces, and you kind of
Oh
addressed
yeah,
it.
the space. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that in an all Black space, I don't have the energy. So, oh no, so with the women in this group, they just talked about uh we read what's her name? Oh, this Black woman in Atlanta, but she's originally from Chicago. And she started a nap ministry.
Yes. I know what you're talking about.
Yes. Okay. I don't have her name in front of me, but it's like, wow. And so that's the other thing about Black women. So my mother told me when I had my first child, she's like, okay, when the baby naps, you nap, or you don't get a nap.
Yes.
And so I'm going to write about that because it's like, yeah, it's not surprise. What I'm writing about though is that during the enslaved ancestors, were not only robbed of 40 acres and a mule and, their freedom and all that kind of stuff, they were robbed of sleep
Yeah.
because they had to work sun to sun, So I think that that's one of the reasons, because it's just such a thread, right? So I'm
Mhm.
also writing about Black maternal health because
Oh,
that's an issue now
wow.
too. Yeah, so I'm working on that with a publication as part of my uh, freelance work. And the reason why is because I had a C-section, but it's also that all these women, Beyonce and Serena and Allison, all those people are dying, and so it's getting a lot more of attention. But I'm wondering if that's because we, as our bodies come to this earth without enough whatever sleep does for you, because you have to think that generations of no sleep or less sleep has affected our internal organs and systems in some way. And I'm down the rabbit hole to find some studies or something to talk about what sleep does for you, and then uh, attach that to, so what did it mean that for generations we didn't sleep enough? What does it mean to our bodies?
Yeah, and I'm glad you're taking that on, because like one of the things I've always wondered about was like just understanding how do certain chronic diseases pass down through certain races and ethnicities but not others, and then that connecting thread literally is there were generations of lineages of our people who did not rest, whose bodies were just working, 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 working. And on top of it, being beaten. And on top of that, weren't getting replenished both with rest and with proper food. And so I
Right,
wonder, like, right, how
right.
much they're
What
like,
is that? Yeah, what did that do to us? Because it had to do
right,
something. You starve people, or you starve
right,
them of sleep. And it's so funny, so that now, I feel like, because like I said, I started napping when I had my first child, and I still nap to this day. And my kids tease me about it, but I'm like, no, napping is a radical act.
yes. No, it is. It's such a radical act, because I'm just like this is one of the reasons why I want to move away from traditional, work for pay. It's your whole life has to revolve around the 40-hour job. It's like somebody I was
The
reading recent,
60-hour job,
right. Yeah, where like you have
because
to
now with the
design.
computers, it's 60. Yeah.
Right. You have to design your doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, hang out with it. Your entire life is dictated by your work. And I'm like, and with that, for many of us that do have those traditional jobs, we work at places where we're making money for someone else based on our labor. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired. I'm like, if I'm going to work hard, I want it to be for me rather than for it to be for somebody else. So we are also, many of us who are African Americans, we're coming out of, and that's that, repairing the generations. We're coming out of that mindset of the labor, giving our labor for somebody else, but we're not truly paid and like honored for that labor that we are giving someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that what's really cool is that my daughter has been traveling a lot because she can do that. And
Yes.
part of it is the whole idea of siesta, right? In Europe, it's only these Nordic countries that don't shut down. They shut down from 2 to 4. Everybody, so there must be something to that. It's not just, oh, look, isn't that cool? A cool cultural tradition. No, it makes sense, because that's what you need to do, is rest from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. Just like, you know, and I think about kindergarten, and how the kids nowadays in school, they're not getting sleep, and how they're blaming um, the computers and the, games and all those kind of things being online, when it's like, no, we have not instituted, like Europe, where you're supposed to get 2 hours of rest midday. That's it. That would help us.
Yeah, because I remember back in kindergarten and hearing like friends of mine that have kids that age, where they're like, because I remember back in kindergarten, I remember nap time, playtime, all those things. Now they don't have that. It's literally they're just constantly learning. And the learning now is graded, which I thought was, I was like, wait, your second grader is getting graded? That's weird. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's overstimulation, and that's I think that's causing, well, not causing, uh, adjacent to anxiety and depression. You're supposed to shut down sometimes. Anyway, so that was a long way around what I'm working on now.
Yes. No, it all, not only does it all feed in, but it also just really makes me think about the writing practice, and especially since you do a lot of writing across platforms, like what all does it take to sustain and to be able to produce the way that you do, so that you're making me think about a whole lot. And speaking of, what advice, especially since you are an educator as well and lead workshops, what advice would you have for someone who wishes to show up in similar spaces and platforms working across various genres like yourself? How would you guide them on how to show up both on the page and navigating, facilitating across the different audiences? Because you write for nonfiction sector, the fiction sector, publications like Business Insider that we mentioned earlier, and then short stories and things like that.
Right, so like I said, I don't see those lines. I mean, I only see those lines when, it's time to get paid.
Yes.
Because those lines are arbitrary, remember? I mean, it's just you're asking, and I'm glad you, mentioned, because I don't think I knew this about you the first time, that shows how close we're getting.
Yes, I love it.
So, as a musician, right, think of them, because my favorite Disney movie, because I'm a Disney movie fan, is, Soul, right? Because the guy's a
Oh, it's so
musician,
good.
right? But he's also teaching. People are pushing him to give up his music dream so that he could get a good job. It's still music. That's what his mother's saying. Good job with benefits, with healthcare benefits, right? So as a musician, if he was playing for an orchestra versus playing for a jazz band versus playing for a marching band, it's all music. Yes?
Yes, very much.
So if I'm writing for a finance outlet, if I'm writing for if I'm going on stage, if I'm writing for a literary magazine, it's all writing. I just don't distinguish that. Now, I do think about, because I have to work with, because it's the same process too. With my freelance work, I have an editor, right? So I have to do research, and I have to,
Oh.
yeah, no, they don't just say, "Oh, here's your article. Thank you very much. Here's your check." No, they or automatic deposit. They have an editor who says, "Okay, you can't say this because I'm going to say that." And
Yes.
so it's like, how do we negotiate around, how I get my point across, and, um, put my name on it, and how it fits for the publication. Now, I do tailor my pitch to the publication, just like I would tailor my query letter to the agent. But when it comes to my work, I work with the editor, but it has to still be mine, right?
Yeah, because you just made me think about that. Like, I didn't realize how intense the editing process would be. And because my first commentary piece through New England Public Media, that was the first time I've done anything like that ever. Besides my dissertation prepared me for that with all the editing and things like that, and all the feedback and the discussing and trying to really tailor the piece for that particular medium. And I'm glad that I got that experience now, because I'm about to go into the land of book writing and returning back to my memoir. I'm now going to be working with a book coach. So it is interesting, that there is, and some people don't know of that process of the business of writing. The person for that particular publication is an editor to make sure that the piece fits for their audiences. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. So it's just, it's the same process. It's just called something else.
Yes. And then also
And that's part
too.
of the learning process of being a writer.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Oh, no, that's part of the
Yeah.
learning process of being a working writer is to know the business lingo. But again, we all, I don't know if we all have, but many of us are in jobs, right? In day jobs. And so you learn the lingo of your industry. You learn the lingo of your uh, roles you can have in the industry. Who do I contact? How do I network? I mean, it's all the same shit.
Yes, it's all the same. It's so all the same. It's
Because
so
it's
all the same.
capitalism, So it's just writing is an art. Just focus on your art in terms of where your heart is. Publishing is a business, just like you focus on your family or people who love you, right? And then you go to a job.
Right? Yes.
And you're okay with people at your job. They're cool, but they're not family, they're not your heart, right?
Yes. No, that's also too another thing to really think about. Is writing as a like the vehicles of writing as a business, because that's now something that I'm tapping into, even though I've been writing now for a little, wow, it's been a little over a decade. Wait. Yeah, it has been, as I started writing in 2009. It's a little bit over a decade, but now and I've been doing a lot of self-publishing type things, but now now I want to write for different audiences in mind. Yeah. So the last
Yeah.
question I have so the last question
Okay,
I
go
have
ahead.
for you.
Mhm.
Yeah. The last question I have for you, Angie, is besides, because it sounds like you're working on multiple pieces right now for different publications. On top of that, what is next for you, and how can the Black Writers Read community support you on that journey?
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yes.
um, no, you know, what am I working on? I just want you all this is what we're working on, right? I
Yes.
just want the other writers from who listen to Black Writers Read to number one, write because it makes us happy. And I need more happy people in the world, right? All these mean, ignorant, sad people, that's not what we need. So, follow in your footsteps. And then, if you want to hook up, for coffee or, all those kind of things, just because one of the things is we're probably all introverts. So for this year, my goal is once a month, I actually get out of the house and see people in small groups, small, because
Yeah, she's like small.
small. And so, that's something that I hope, when I come across a Black Writers Read person, it's like, let's go. My two favorites, well, no, my only favorite is a bakery or, when I say coffee, I really mean cake.
Yes.
So find something, cake, ice cream is another.
Oh yeah. See,
So we
I'm
can have
learning
a
now.
conversation, that it's like, yeah, another writer, who's happy, who's been writing. I don't want y'all sad ass writers. I want the
Yeah.
happy.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. And what's funny when you mention the introvert, so this is something that a lot of people don't know about me. A lot of people think I'm an extrovert. I'm just a great actor.
Right, me too. No, well, it's like I said, I learned that, yes, I'm a great actor, but also that it just takes a lot more energy to be extroverted. I don't have that energy naturally. So when I do go to something, not like this one-on-one is really cool. It's like I am exhausted. Hey, so guess what I do? Take a nap.
Yes. Yeah, because I do that too. Because people are like, they think I'm extroverted. I'm great at performing in public. I come home after something and I collapse. Like
It
I
just takes so much.
it does. I'm like,
Yeah.
I need that silent time. I need, and people like even my the people that I live with, my family, they're like, "You nap a lot." Yes, because I have to talk to a lot of people, and I have to, like I think I'm great at playing the extrovert, and it's so interesting. I'm learning now more as the writer in me is coming out more, and I've been that writer since I was little, as I'm discovering different things about myself. But it's like as I'm now diving deeper more into writing, I'm learning how I have to be introverted because I need to be more reflective, more like retrospective. I have to really take the time to think. And as an extrovert, you can't really take the time to think. You're socializing, and socializing, you have to be present in the moment. Whereas with
Mhm.
writing, you have to do a lot of, okay, flashback and all those things, which you can't really do when you're around a lot of people.
Right. It's a writing journey, right? So it's like, I'm traveling when I am writing to like all those different places, looking at the details and, like, yeah. And so travel is exhausting, as we will know, especially now with the way the industry is. Um, and so I have to save that, or else I can't go as far on the journey. I don't get as much work done. But when I am rested and nobody's bothering me, and I have nothing on the calendar, um, I can go for you can. That's why you can do your art for hours at a time, right? It's like, but you need those hours at a time because you don't want to deal with you're alone with the muse, right? With the whatever the artistic voice is. What was the other one? There's a book. Oh, yeah, to get back into the dream state, you know?
Oh,
Yeah. So,
nice.
and on the other hand, you need to be out with people sometimes, but just you have to be very careful about the people who are with you. And, so that's why my new goal is to once a month to go out with people who I really would like to get to know better, and to do not, and with people who I don't need to spend a lot of energy on because they're good people and I don't have, because that's what it really is. I shouldn't say good people, but I think where my energy goes is the fakeness, the performance. That's what it is. As a Black woman, I'm on stage as soon as I leave my house,
Yep.
right? So that's where that energy goes. So that's why it's like, well, don't leave your house.
Don't leave your house.
But then the second thing is I do want to go with people where I'm not performing. So I have to uh, evaluate people and say, okay, you're somebody I want to spend time with because it won't be draining, right? And those are the people I was like, and I want to spend even more time with because, I need that. It's the performance that's so hard. And
Yeah.
for people who are working day jobs, they're performing 8, 10 hours a day. You know, a Broadway show is only 3 hours.
Yeah! Some of them are even shorter.
Some of them are even shorter, right? But I'm counting the hours where you have to get to this theater and change clothes and all this kind of stuff. And it's, I've really, you can see I've really meditated on this because the other thing I'm doing is I'm getting through stuff in my closet because it's like I don't even want the costumes anymore.
Oh,
And that's why I'm thinking
wow.
about them, you know, the things you wear to work, I'm like, no, I want to work like the things I like, right? Not because they're good for work.
Wow. And that's something else to think about too. And I think that's the other reason why I'm so exhausted by like the 9 to 5. It's you have to not only put on the costume, but the performance. Like this is one of the reasons why I love, because I now work a job where I'm hybrid. I don't have to do the performance and the song and dance all the time and go to all these fake ass meetings and fake
Oh,
ass retreats.
meetings.
And I'm like, no.
Can't we just decide? I don't care. Why do we have to meet about
Yeah.
it? You're in charge. Decide. I want to build
Yeah.
consensus. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You just want us to nod our heads. Okay, I'm nodding my head. Can I get back to work so I can go home?
Right. Yes. And the whole we need to go out for like
Team
team building.
building.
We don't need to
I don't
team
like you
build.
all. You're not my friends. If I want to go out with you, I will say, hey, why don't you come over to my house for dinner? As opposed to team building. Please just let me head down, do my job, go home. And nap.
Yes. And right, and nap. I love the nap. Oh my god, which I still have to get that book, but I follow the nap ministry on social media.
Right.
Now there's my dogs. I was
Okay,
waiting for them.
good. That's a sign though, because Lizzie came in here and she's like, it's past 4:00 and that's my dinner.
Oh, they eat dinner because ours eats at. They're supposed to eat at 6, but the protest starts about right now. Like they start protesting for dinner around 4:15, 4:30, and I'm like, y'all got an hour and a half. You can't wait. And they're like, no. The Chihuahua starts like doing her steps, walking back and forth.
Do you see me? Do you see me? I'm not gonna leave until you pay attention to me. Give me my food.
And then the cats start wrestling. We have a lot of pets. The cats start wrestling, and I'm like, they do the same thing every day at the same time. And I'm like, do y'all have little watches on?
No, they don't have to. But it's good for me because when I get into those really bad moods, it's like, oh, I still have to get up and feed the dog. So, yeah.
That's a good point. They keep you in a routine. They do,
Mm-hmm.
which has been very helpful for me and my anxiety and like bouts of depression. They're like, nope, you can't sleep right now because I'm dependent on you. You need to feed me. You're the only one that could go to that canister in the closet, pull the canister down, open it, and put my food in the thing from the thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Even though Lizzie knows that she'll wake me up after I've napped too long. She doesn't interrupt my nap though.
She knows, or she would be outside.
She's like, okay, yeah, you need to get up. This is sad. Even for me, you need to get up. Call somebody.
Yes. Or like speaking of like the pets keeping you in a routine. I can't remember where I saw it. Was it on Facebook or Instagram yesterday, or even the YouTube shorts? It was like a guy pretending like he was dead in a casket at his funeral. And it was like, this is what my cat would do at my funeral. He up there playing dead. The cat slides a note under his body and was like, where are you going to feed me? I was like, yes. It's so true. That's pets for you.
Yes.
They're like, their worlds keep going, which I'm glad that your dog reminded you that it's her dinner time. So this is, I think, a great way to wrap up. But Angie, it was so great to finally have you on to have a longer conversation with you.
Yeah, I've missed you. We should get together sometime. Because
yes, we do.
You feed my energy, but after a nap.
Yes! Oh, trust me, I will come find you after a nap. But we also too, I need to come out to the Boston area. I haven't been since actually haven't been since I got COVID in 2022. I was out there for meeting up with a friend, and next I went to a conference and I came back sick. So I haven't been out in a while, but I do miss the area. I do need to come out and visit and get to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, let's do it. Make it happen, Nicole.
Yes.
And thanks so much for having me. I love these little chats because even though I know there's other people listening, it really feels like it's just you and me.
Yes, I love that. Like, it's essentially people are listening in on our phone conversations. That's how I want to think about Black Writers Read. Is people are listening in on us rather than it being performative for like for people tuning in. Yes. So I'm going to go ahead. I have a couple of things to wrap us up. So Angie, I will be checking in with you shortly. So thank you so much for being on.
All right. Take care.
You too. So thank you all so much for joining us for today's episode of Black Writers Read. Find us online at blackwritersread.com. Sorry, I have to cough. Support Black Writers Read by subscribing to my YouTube channel or to the audio podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Also, feel free, please do. This helps me out a lot. Drop a review of Black Writers Read on the podcast on one of the platforms that you follow. Also, too, by supporting us as a subscriber or a reviewer, you're growing our community, which can lead to future sponsorships and long-term financial sustainability of the platform. Please, reviews help because some people don't like doing positive reviews. Positive reviews are great. Any review is awesome. Subscribing, I need, because to grow the community, this is the way to do that. So thank you all for spending your afternoon with us, and more importantly, for ensuring that Black authors continue to matter. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.